You wake up, and within seconds, the mind begins. Worry, planning, replaying yesterday, rehearsing tomorrow, and somewhere beneath all that noise, you feel it, the exhaustion, the bone-deep tiredness of being someone, of holding yourself together, of pretending you know what you're doing, of carrying this I like a heavy suitcase you can never put down. What if the very thing you've been trying to fix was never real to begin with? What if the self you've been defending, improving, protecting all these years is just a shadow, a story the mind tells, over and over, until you forget it's fiction? There's a question, one question, asked correctly, it unravels everything, and once you see what it reveals, you can never unsee it. In the early 20th century, in the sacred hills of Arunachala, South India, a young sage sat in profound silence. His name was Ramana Maharshi. Seekers came from across the world, complex questions about existence, about suffering, about enlightenment, and his response was always devastatingly simple. Who is asking? This wasn't dismissal. It was an invitation, a doorway, the most direct path to what every spiritual tradition points toward, the recognition of what you truly are. His teaching was called Ātmā Vicāra, a Sanskrit term meaning self-inquiry, the investigation into the nature of being, the process of discovering who we really are. This is jnana yoga, the yoga of self-knowledge, not knowledge gathered from books, but direct recognition. Ramana taught that this practice was the most efficient and direct way to discover the unreality of the I thought, the constant attention to the inner awareness of I am, to see through the illusion that has kept us bound. One of his closest disciples, Annamalai Swami, spent years absorbing this teaching, living it, breathing it, and in his final talks, recorded in the book that carries that name, he distilled the essence of this practice into words that still cut through confusion today. The mind is only a shadow. You cannot control a shadow by chasing it with another shadow. Today, we simply invite ourselves to turn inward and witness the awareness that watches all thinking. This contemplation offers a quiet space to understand how to dissolve the illusion of separation, how to return to your natural state, the awareness you've always been. Before the story of you began, imagine walking at a dusk. The light is fading. You see something on the path ahead, a snake. Your heart races. Fear floods your body. Adrenaline spikes. Every muscle prepares to run. But when you step closer, it's just a rope. The snake was never there. Only your mind's projection, a layer of interpretation placed over reality, an extra layer, an imaginary image superimposed on what is. This is what happens in every moment of your life. The mind overlays reality with names and forms, with judgments, with the constant story of me and my life and my problems, and you forget the original substance, the rope beneath the snake, the pure consciousness beneath all appearances. Annamalai Swami called this the root mistake. Where there is a rope, the ignorant mind sees a snake. Where there is pure awareness, we see a separate self, a person, someone with a history, a future, anxieties, ambitions. And once that misidentification takes hold, suffering follows naturally, because you start to believe, I am this body, I am these thoughts, I am this story, and suddenly there's something to defend, something to improve, something fragile that can be hurt. But what if none of that was ever true. In Ramana's teaching, there is one thought that gives birth to all others. One thought that acts as the thread connecting every worry, every plan, every fear. It's the thought, I am the body, or I am the mind. This is the root, and from it, the entire tree of suffering grows. Every other thought in your mind feeds off this one. I am anxious. I am lonely. I am not enough. I need to become something more. But if you trace any thought back to its origin, you always find the same source, the thinker, the one who says, I. And here's what Ramana discovered in his own awakening at age 16, lying on the floor of his uncle's house, confronting death directly. When you turn your full attention toward this I, when you ask with total sincerity, who am I? The I begins to dissolve. It cannot withstand inquiry because it was never solid to begin with. Annamalai Swami used a powerful image. He said, your mind is like a castle under siege. The thoughts are the occupants inside, and they need supplies to survive. Your attention, your belief, your emotional reaction. Cut off the supply, they starve. One by one, they surrender, and eventually, the castle stands empty. If you give your mind your full, disinterested attention, you will begin to understand the futility of all mental activity. Annamalai Swami. This is the practice of Ātmā Vicāra, not fighting with thoughts, not trying to control the mind with more thinking, but simply withdrawing your investment, questioning the thinker before the thought has time to develop into a full story. Ramana instructed, when a thought arises, immediately challenge it. Ask, to whom does this thought arise? The answer is always, to me. Then ask, who am I? And don't answer with concepts. Don't say, I am consciousness, or I am the self. Those are just more thoughts. Instead, turn your attention inward, toward the sense of presence that exists before language, the feeling of being here, aware, witnessing. This is the practice from the book Final Talks by Annamalai Swami. These reflections we're exploring today are drawn from his direct transmission, a disciple who walked the path of self-inquiry until the walker dissolved, until only awareness remained. Let's practice this now, not as something separate from your life, but as what's possible in this very moment. Sit comfortably. You don't need to close your eyes. You don't need a special posture. Just notice your breath, the rise and fall. Now notice a thought is arising, maybe a plan for later, a memory, a judgment about this video. Don't follow it. Before it develops, ask, who is thinking this? Don't search for an answer with your mind, just to turn your attention inward, toward the space from which the thought emerged, not the content of the thought, the source. Where does this I come from? Feel into that question. Don't think about it. If you stay with this without rushing, something shifts. The thought loses its momentum. It doesn't become a story. And what remains is simply presence, awareness, not your awareness, just awareness itself. Notice the space around your thoughts, the silence between them, the background that's always here. Try again. Another thought. Maybe resistance now. This isn't working. I don't feel anything. Catch it. Who feels nothing? Who is resisting? Notice, there's a thought, and there's the one watching the thought. But when you look for that watcher, can you find it? Or is there just witnessing, just awareness, aware of itself. Stay here, in this space, this quiet. This is your natural state. Before the narration began, before you became someone. What you're discovering is that the thinker you've been identifying with your entire life is just another thought, another appearance in consciousness. It has no substance, no location, no independent existence. You are not the thinker of your thoughts. You are the awareness in which all thoughts appear and dissolve. When the river dissolves into the ocean, the river is no more. Only the ocean remains. This was his way of describing what happens when self-inquiry deepens. The individual sense of me, the river, flows back to its source. And when it arrives, it realizes it was always water, always the ocean. The separation was just a temporary form. You don't need to sit in a cave to practice this. Ramana insisted that Ātmā Vicāra is not a part-time activity. It's not something you do for 20 minutes in the morning and then forget. It's a continuous returning, a 180-degree turn away from the world and back toward the source of awareness itself. Traffic, frustration rising. Turn inward. Who is frustrated? Anxiety before the meeting, heart racing. Stop. Who feels this? Scrolling, hollow, empty. Where is this emptiness? Who experiences it? Not as a mental trick, but as a genuine investigation, a pulling back of attention from the object to the subject, from the thought to the thinker, and then from the thinker to the witnessing awareness that even watches the thinker. Annamalai Swami warned that this practice requires great determination because the mind has been running on autopilot for so long. All your conditioning reinforces the belief that you are someone, that you are this body-mind navigating through a dangerous world. Your entire psychological structure is built on separation, on the premise of me versus the world. So when you begin to question that premise, the mind resists. It tells you this is too difficult, too abstract, that you need more preparation, more knowledge, more time. But this is just the mind defending its own existence. Ramana compared the spiritual path to climbing a slippery hill. You make progress. You climb higher. But if you lose attention for even a moment, you slide back down. You fall into old patterns, old identifications. So, the practice must be constant, not aggressive, not forced, but continuous, like a river flowing steadily back to the sea. Don't stop for distractions along the way. Don't cling to spiritual experiences or temporary insights. Don't compare yourself to others. Just keep flowing inward, back to the source. And here's the paradox Annamalai Swami taught. You need great effort to recognize what requires no effort at all. Because in truth, you are already what you seek. You are already the ocean, the awareness, the self. You've just forgotten. You've believed in the story of separation for so long that it feels like reality. But it's not. Think of it this way. If you see an elephant carved in wood, at some point you forget it's just wood. You see the form of the sculpture. You give it the name elephant. Your mind gives meaning to the form, and you forget what that object really is. Its origin, a block of wood. The same happens when you see a gold ring. You see a form and call it a ring. And while you're classifying by form and characteristics, you forget the original substance, gold. Self-inquiry is the process by which all our attention is placed on the source, on the origin, instead of giving attention to the names and forms habitually attributed. the layers that overlay reality. All things, all manifestations arise through consciousness. So, what is the origin of everything? The one who understands this completely never deludes themselves by believing in the additions of names and forms, the layers of perception that distort what is real. Darkness, Annamalai said, is not something real that you need to fight or eliminate. It's simply the absence of light. You don't remove darkness by digging a hole and burying it. You don't chase a shadow with another shadow. You simply turn on the light, and the darkness disappears on its own. Remove the darkness of ignorance through the light of self-knowledge. You don't need to destroy the ego. You don't need to kill the mind. You just need to see clearly, to recognize that the snake was always a rope. The separate self was always a misperception. And when that recognition stabilizes, when you can remain as pure awareness without slipping back into identification, then ignorance cannot return. The journey is complete. What remains when you stop fueling the story of me? What's here when thought becomes quiet? Not emptiness, not void, but presence, fullness, peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, awareness that witnesses everything but is touched by nothing. This is what the ancient texts called Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, not as a future attainment, but as your natural state, right now. You are not the thinker. You are the space in which thinking happens, like clouds passing through the sky. The sky remains untouched, vast, clear, unchanging. This recognition, this is Ātmā Vicāra, the end of seeking, the beginning of being. The mind will tell you this is too hard. That enlightenment is for special people, saints and sages, not for you. But Ramana's teaching is radically democratic. He insisted there is no hierarchy in truth, no spiritual resume required, only the willingness to turn inward and ask the one question that unravels all others. Who am I? Not who do I think I am, not who does society say I am, but what is this awareness that knows itself as I am? This isn't about becoming someone spiritual. It's about unbecoming everything you thought you were. Let that sink in. So, here's the invitation, not to believe any of this, but to test it, to sit with the question, to notice what happens when you withdraw attention from the endless commentary of mind and rest as the one who watches. If this resonates, let it settle. Don't rush to the next thing. Sit with the question, who am I? And maybe, if something shifts, leave a comment. Share what arises when you stop chasing thoughts and simply witness the space they appear in. Because this isn't a technique to master. It's a recognition that ends all techniques, a returning to what you've always been. The awareness that was here before your first thought, that will be here after your last. That is here now, watching the mind interpret, feeling the pull to understand. That awareness is not separate from you. It is you, the real you, before the story, before the name, before the fear, and the striving and the endless becoming. Just this, just presence, just being. Until next time, remain as you are, not as the story, not as the thinker, but as the awareness that needs nothing added and cannot be diminished. The ocean welcoming the river home. Silence.